Steve Moore, alcoholic. Steve. It's good to be here. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for the introduction, Chuck. I'm not sure. There's a fine line between that being a compliment and being something else, I think. But it is about the truth. I went from Infamil to Jack Daniels to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it seemed like it was about that quick. I didn't waste any time doing what I needed to do and getting sober, and luckily, fortunately, being able to stay sober. I am a member of the Primary Purpose Group in Southern Pines. We meet on Mondays and Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. And we have a great newcomers meeting on Monday night, and Thursday we have an open speaker meeting. And if you've never been there, we just invite you. I'm not really up here trolling for membership. Well, maybe I am. I don't know. If you need a home group, I tell you, Keeping It Sober is a great group. And there's several good groups in Moore County, and at least love to have you visit. Like Chuck said, the other thing our group does is that, and it's just what I appreciate being a part of is not only the meetings that we have on Mondays and Thursday nights, is what usually we're doing the other 5 nights of the week, and I think that's what makes a solid home group. I think that's one of the things that makes Keeping It Sober a good, solid home group, as well as ours is, we've got members that are going out and doing stuff and actively carrying the message. Sometimes I think we say the program is based on attraction rather than promotion, and I believe that's true in a lot of respects, but a lot of times the people that need help aren't going to just show up here, or show up where an AA meeting is and get the help they need. We're going to have to go to where they're at. And, I think it's real cool that Keeping It Sober and the Primary Purpose Group have been able to cooperate, and a lot of these guys go with them down at Wednesday night to Morrison Correctional, and I guarantee you those guys aren't going to just show up at an AA meeting. They're kind of captured down there. They're not going anywhere. So we have to go to them. And but then going over to the detox, 3 times a week, and like I said, a lot of several of y'all members have gotten involved in that too, and we appreciate that. That's a good cooperative relationship that it's been a long time coming, and I'll tell you, I think it's a big deal, and it speaks highly for both groups. Chuck asked me to speak, and I do. I always try to do whatever's asked in Alcoholics Anonymous, and when he asked me to speak, I didn't hesitate. Just wanted to make sure I could make it happen. Just to get into my story, just to qualify myself a little bit, and I think one of the things about listening to a speaker is just the identification. You don't have to like my necktie, and you don't have to like me. Hopefully, you'll be able to listen with an open mind, and hopefully hear a little bit about the pain and the loneliness of where my alcoholism took me. And that's I think if a person connects with that, then they're probably going to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous and get sober and stay sober. If they sort of miss that identification, then that's going to be a little bit of a stumbling block, I think. And congratulations to you guys here that identified yourself of being sober less than 3 months. I mean, that's a big deal. It's a tough place to be, but it's a good place to be if we're in Alcoholics Anonymous, and hopefully reasonably happy about that. At 3 months, I'm not sure I was, but I'll get into maybe a little bit of that. I'm a local guy. I was born and raised here in Moore County, and I come from a good family. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. There's nothing really I can say about my family that contributed to my alcoholism. I don't know. There was just something going on with me that was just, that just goes on. It's just something. I think we just feel different than the average human being. I don't know, or either maybe a lot of people feel the way we feel, but I'll tell you what, we find a way to take care of the way we feel usually pretty quick. And if you'd have looked at me, growing up in that family and going to school and whatever, you would have probably saw what looked like a normal guy. Average. I wasn't going to really excel at anything, but you would have saw somebody that probably just looks like they fit in and they're normal and that they get it. But I'll tell you what, if you looked on the inside, or if I could have told you really the way I felt on the inside, it would have been anything but normal. In fact, it'd have been just, and again, I don't know why. I really can't put my finger on it, but I just felt like I didn't get it. I just didn't measure up. And I hated school, and just couldn't stand anything about that. But growing up, my parents were good to us. We were raised. My dad owned a business there in Carthage, and looking, at the time, I thought, we we didn't really have as much or as other people or whatnot. Looking back, I know that wasn't the truth. We were probably doing okay. Get into my story kind of quick. At 11 years old, and by the way, Chuck said I could talk about drugs, but I couldn't use any profanity. I like that. But I love to talk about drugs and cuss. I'll try not to do much of either. But, it's about the identification. It's about sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And I don't know that sometimes maybe we get caught up on stuff we shouldn't. But, I was reading in Bill's story. He talks about the doctor giving him sedatives. The next morning found him drinking gin and sedatives. I don't know if it's okay for Bill to write in his story. Maybe it's okay for me to do what I need to identify. But 11 years old, my older brother, and a friend of his, we were off one night and they introduced me to smoking weed. And I don't know, from the very first start, I loved it. I tell you, whatever it was I was missing, I found it that night. And I loved everything about it. It was kind of like the first time I had sex. I didn't understand it, but I knew I wanted to do it a lot, and as much as possible. And I probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway, that's probably worse than profanity and drugs right there, but I'll try to clean it up from there. But anyhow, I think you got the point. But I loved it, and I didn't just spin out of control with that at 11 years old, but I'll tell you, around 11, 12 years old, I got drunk for the first time, camping out with the guys, and could get wine and could get pretty much the other stuff too pretty easily with older brothers. But we got a hold of some MD 2020 one night, and I'll tell you, I don't recommend that stuff, but it'll work. And I had experimented with alcohol, but I got enough in me that night to just feel that change, and it was different from the experience with weed. But I just loved it, and once I was able to kind of get past the taste and get enough of that wine in me, I got it. I understood, I knew what I was missing. That's just the bottom line. I knew I'd found something that I was hopefully going to pursue the rest of my life, and why wouldn't you? Man, the way that stuff made me feel. And so that was kind of the way it was. I mean, camping out, mostly limited to the weekends, or whenever we could. Probably not even every weekend, but from those first two experiences, I just, that was what, the book talks about, a lot of us have strong willpower and we have strong wills and whatnot, but when it comes to combating liquor, our will is amazingly weakened, is what it says. But I'll tell you, once I kind of get in my mind I want to do something, I usually find a way to do it. I usually figure that out. And, so I was able to do that as, quite a bit. I guess, kind of going through, I made it through elementary school, and I don't remember getting in a lot of trouble doing this stuff. And I, hit high school, and I played sports. I loved baseball, and I loved to play baseball, and I was pretty decent at it. I was not, gonna make it to the major leagues by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoyed it, and it was fun. Hit high school. I was kind of off and running with the partying. It was getting high every day, drinking heavily on the weekends, and I just found a different crowd. And I always told myself, the weed's okay, but nothing else. I would never, of course the drinking's fine. That's, everybody knows that makes sense, but nothing else. I was going to limit it to that. And when I got to high school, things changed. I guess I wanted to expand my horizons or whatever, but I was pretty much open to anything, and there was a lot of stuff available. And hit 16, got my driver's license. Man, I'll tell you, I had you see some cars today, but I had a sound system in that 72 Pinto. It cost more than the car did. I mean, it was nice. And that was, I had a cassette player. I graduated. My brothers had 8-track. A lot of you in here don't even know what a cassette is, because that kind of almost dates you anymore. But I loved, we would jam out with Leonard Skinner, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and I loved all that stuff. And I just loved everything about, the getting high, the partying, and just staying screwed up. And that was my main focus. And that was about the same time, girls started coming into the scene too. And that, I just loved everything about it. I love partying from the bottom of my heart. And I kind of like old Norm. Some of y'all might have remembered old Norm from Florence. He said he loved whiskey from the bottom of his heart. and so did I. And I loved everything that went along with it. I made it through high school, and I don't know how. I can tell you, high school, I lived up to it. If it's high school, I stayed high all 4 years best I could. And I don't know if that's why they call it high school or not, but it seemed like it made sense to me. I was going to try to make that work. I did graduate from high school, and, I don't know how I made it out, but and didn't get into a lot of trouble. I love the fast cars. We loved to drag race, outside of Carthage. There was a long straight road, and we just, the party was on, and it was a lot of fun. When I graduated out of high school, I heard a guy say this over at Detox one night, and it made sense to me. And he was just kind of sharing a little bit about his experience. He said he when he got out of high school, the partying really stopped, but he kept drinking, and that was me. The partying was almost over because I was drinking. It wasn't just something fun to do. It was something I had to do. And I know if I don't put a lot of thought into this, but if I crossed that line into uncontrolled drinking, it was when I just kind of looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but when I hit 16 years old, I'm pretty sure there was nothing going to get in my way. I was off and running, and I was, I know by that point, once I took that first drink, it was on. We rolled hard and we rolled fast, and there was just no letting up. And the guys that I drank with and the gals that I drank with, the same way. It was hard to look at any of us until we had a problem. We were all doing the same thing. We were all hitting it hard, pretty much the same. Anyhow, I got out of high school, and, like I said, my dad had a business, and, I didn't tell my sobriety date. I got one. That's the good news. It's March 24th, 1984. And, I'm grateful for that. I tell you, I guess it's good news, bad news. Good news, I've been sober since then. Bad news is, man, I'm getting old. But I guess maybe that's good news too. It beats the alternative. But anyhow, I got out of high school, and this was the early 80s. I graduated in 81. And my parents, they hit some hard times. It was tough economic times, but they ended up having to shut down the business and file bankruptcy. And part of that was that I stole a lot from my parents. I stole a lot of money. I stole a lot of merchandise. And I really struggled with that. And I don't know that I can take all the credit for what happened within that business, but I'll tell you, I had a fair amount of ownership in that because, I was working and making money, but it wasn't enough to do the things that I was needing to do. It just wasn't enough. And luckily, I was able to clean some of that stuff up in sobriety, and hopefully I can hit on that some. But I got out of high school, and I don't know. I graduated. I was 17, and when the store shut down, I would get a job here and there, but I couldn't hold a job. I tell you, working got in the way of my drinking, and it's funny. I got two older brothers that had gotten sober in the program, and those dudes could party all night and get up and go to work the next morning and hold down jobs. I ain't never understood that. Some of y'all probably can do that. I don't know. I couldn't do it. If I'm partying all night, I ain't getting up anytime soon, unless it's around lunchtime. And so I just struggled with that and couldn't hold down a job. And I guess I got my first brush with the law. There's a lot of close calls, but I guess my first brush with the law was when I was 18. I'd already graduated from high school, and I got a DUI. And the policeman pulled me over, and I had been drinking some TJ Swan. I think I was stepping out that night, and I don't know. I was probably a bigger wino than I was anything, but I was drinking TJ Swan that night, and this would really be what my life would look like. It was probably around 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock, riding around Carthage. I don't know what I was looking for. There's not much happening there at night. And I got pulled over, and it was a deputy sheriff. And, I was pretty tore up. And he asked me to walk that straight line, and I said, dude, I can't walk that. I'm too drunk to walk. That's why I'm driving. And he didn't have a bit of sense of humor with that. And so we went to jail. And it was fun. I said it was fun. It was kind of funny and hilarious because I was so tore up I really didn't probably understand. And DUIs then weren't quite as serious as they are now. It was getting to be. But I was in the police department or the jailhouse up there in Carthage, and just having fun until I looked up and saw my dad. I guess somebody had called my dad and to come get me, and I'll tell you, that wiped a smile off my face right quick, because my dad was a good man, and I swear I don't know if he said anything to me that night other than that'll cost you. But he didn't. He just was pretty laid back and mellow in a lot of respects. But I ended up going to court and getting out of that fairly easy. I lost my license, I think, for years, but I continued to drive, and actually I got restricted license at that point. But that didn't slow me down. That didn't wake me up. I think I blew a 19. He said it's closer to a 20, but we'll call it a 19. The guys I ran with, the more you blow, the more impressive it is. And I was a little disappointed in the 19, but I did the best. I blew it as hard as I could. And I didn't the second time, though. And they knew it. I don't know how they know that, but they just know if you're not blowing on that deal. But so anyway, my life, it was just a series of maybe trying to get a job or hold a job for a few weeks, and then the other thing I could identify with Bill Wilson when he talked about he stole money from his wife's slender purse, and I did that. I didn't have a wife, but my mom, I stole money out of her purse too, and on more than one occasion. My life was just spiraling out of control. I would wake up in the mornings and I'd be pretty sick. I'd be pretty broke, and it wouldn't be pretty broke. I'd be broke, and the shaking, I just, somebody asked me why I'm shaking, like I had bad nerves, and I did. They were bad until I could steal them with the drink. But that's, and I thought, at 18, 19 years old, I was a young guy. That's a pretty rough shape to be in at what I think now is a pretty young age. But that's the way it was. Just kind of fast forward and what my life looked like at 20 years old when January of '84 was kind of the beginning of the end. I was living at home. I was taking advantage of my parents, and I was pretty much taking advantage of anybody that crossed my path. I was a taker of things and a user of people, and anybody that crossed my path at some point was probably going to be sorry they ever met me, because I just, when I couldn't hold down a job or and get any money, I had to do what I had to do, and so a lot of people got hurt, a lot of people got taken advantage of in any way possible, and primarily my family and my parents, because they were pretty easy targets. But anyhow, one night, it was January of '84. I was sitting uptown at Carthage. Now this is the end. I don't know if this is insanity of alcoholism or just pure stupidity. Sometimes I think there's a fine line between the two. But I'm sitting up at Carthage at the laundromat, and it's like 11 o'clock, and riding around Carthage, sitting around Carthage, 11 o'clock at night. I don't know who I thought I was going to see. The only people are out that time of night is the cops. And the town cop, the way things happened a few times is he would pull me over. I'd be drinking. He'd make me park my car and take me home. I had one cop pull me when I was 16. He said, "What's in the cooler?" It was in the back of my '68 Camaro. I said, "Well," he looked in and it was beer. He said, "Best thing you can do is get out of town till it's gone." I'm like, "That's a great idea. You won't see me anymore tonight." And so that's, and the cop that happened to pull up beside me this particular night at the laundromat, he had harassed me more than once. He, taking my stuff and whatever. But he did tell me, he said, 3 strikes and you're out, and this is strike number 2. Well, the night that I'm talking about that he pulled up beside me was strike 3, because he asked me to get out of the car and he searched me, and I had diversified my income, I guess you might say. I'd started selling weed because I was, couldn't hold a job and just trying to make some money. And I was a pretty big time dealer. I think he busted me that night with an ounce, and he confiscated all my cash. I think it was $80. I was a big time dealer. I tell you, the most painful thing is he took my Jack Daniels, and that was painful as hell. He took my car. I mean, I could have had the car. I'd like to kept the whiskey, because I was in a '69 Plymouth Valiant. That's what I drove, and In fact, a little story on that car, not that anybody would care, but my parents financed that car for me, and I don't know why I didn't have a job, but they financed it at $20 a week because they knew I wouldn't make a monthly payment. And when all this stuff went down and hit the fan, they ended up repossessing the car. You get a '69 Plymouth Valiant repossessed, life ain't good, I can tell you that. And I don't care what year it's in, that's bad. But anyway, the cop hauled me downtown, uptown in Carthage or wherever, but he took me to jail, I know that. And they had I also had my list of accounts receivables too, because I had to sell on credit, because most of the people I was dealing with was as broke as I was. And they really, that was, like I said, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and they grilled me. They knew that I really did have some decent connections, not that I was anything a big deal, but they knew that I knew a lot of people, and they really, they kept me in there until I didn't get home till like 5 o'clock that morning. Because they wanted a lot of information that I really wasn't willing to give them, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, I'm just glad that when I hit that trouble, that I didn't have to bring anybody else down with me because of it. Anyway, I went and saw my lawyer, and this is kind of another point that I'd like to make. I know at a lot of group levels and the district level. We have what we call CPCPI committee, which is cooperation with professional community and public information. And I think that's some of the best work that we can do as members of Alcoholics Anonymous, is inform our, and it's a comfort level and it's an individual thing. Some people are okay telling their doctor, their lawyer, their dentist, their preacher or whoever that they're in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if anybody needs help, contact them. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I wasn't always, and I think it doesn't have to really be any organized deal like that, but I just think that's something we ought to think about if we're comfortable doing it, is letting those professionals know that are in our lives that, we found a solution to alcoholism, and we're willing to share that with other people, because these professionals that we run into sometimes don't know where to send people. They may send them to a lot of places that's not good for them, but I'll tell you, the best place to send a person like me that was in trouble was Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what my lawyer did. Back to the point, I went and saw my lawyer, and he knew I was in trouble, not only with the law, but I mean, a guy, a couple DUIs, yeah, that don't mean you're an alcoholic. None of that stuff means you're an alcoholic. My alcoholism lives, a lot deeper than the stuff that happened to me and the circumstances. My alcoholism lives within me with the selfishness, the self-centeredness, the guilt, the fear, the shame, the remorse. I mean, that's really where my alcoholism lives. The stuff that was happening in my life was just circumstances, and I think a symptom of the problem. But my lawyer didn't, what he told me to do, he said, you need to go see a counselor over at Sandhills Mental Health Center at the time. I guess it's Daymark now, but... And he just said, you need to go see a counselor. And I went and saw the counselor because I didn't want to go to jail, and I knew that's where I was headed. And so my lawyer's a non-alcoholic, and I went and saw this counselor that was a non-alcoholic. And the counselor suggested I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And my first meeting was a Monday night over at Episcopal. I think it was a speaker meeting at that time. And I don't know anything about it, didn't get much out of it, but I went. And I went back to my counselor like a week later and told him, that I went to a meeting. I'm far from being sober, and I was probably maybe a little bit honest with him. And what he recommended at that point is that he said that I really should consider going down to Samaritan Colony down in Rockingham. And, at that time, Samaritan Colony was an 8-week program. It currently is they've changed years ago. It's a 28-day program. But he told me to go down there, or he suggested I go down there. I ain't sure he suggested or said best thing you can do is get down there. And, I tell you, that was the furthest thing from my mind, and that was the last thing in the world that I ever wanted to do, was go check into a treatment center for alcoholism at 20 years old. I mean, it don't get any worse than that. I mean, that's, that was a level of hopelessness that I'd never experienced. And in fact, I hope I never experience again. But, what he told me to do was, that was a Friday. He said, they'll take you Monday morning. And he said, you've got to be alcohol and drug free for 48 hours. They didn't require you to go through detox. I think they do now. I'm not sure exactly. But, I'm thinking, I've got to go somewhere for 8 weeks. I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere. I think it's like 6 miles out of Rockingham. Of course, you go 6 miles in any direction out of Rockingham, you're in the middle of nowhere. And no girls. That was probably more troublesome than no liquor. But anyway, and he wanted me to start 2 days early, 48 hours early. I'm like, no way. And I probably told him I would, and I probably had good intentions when I said that. So I left his office that Friday, and my oldest brother I was actually working for him at the time, part time, and I told him what I was going to have to do, and he agreed to take me down there Monday morning, and I partied that weekend. I don't remember much about it. I don't know if y'all remember your first few days before checking into a treatment center. Tell them I'm not here, Bill, if it's for me. But I'll tell you, it was the drinking that weekend was not fun. There was nothing fun about it, and I drank on up until that Sunday night. I don't tell Harold now; he still don't know that. But I drank as much as I could, as long as I could, before I had to go check into the colony. And but I went down there that Monday morning, and when I crossed that hill down there to Samaritan Colony, I was as hopeless and as helpless, and my life was as dark as it had ever been. And I thought, there's no way, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't really know exactly why I'm doing it, other than trying to stay out of jail. But this is as useless and as hopeless as it could be. And I think the good thing, the good news about that is what I thought was the darkest and the most hopeless time of my life ended up being one of the bright spots in my life. Because I was able to, I was able to go down there and listen with an open mind. And I didn't just go down there and surrender and think these 12 steps are good and it's a good idea to get sober. Man, I kicked and I screamed and I fought with all I had. But what I did is I tried to listen and they carried us through the first 5 steps of the steps. And I struggled with that 4th step, and I struggled with all of it. I especially struggled with the God thing and the spirituality. And I think one of the things that helped me keep an open mind was that 3rd step, God as we understand Him. And I think that's what Ebby told Bill. When Bill was struggling with getting sober, he said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God? It's just got to make sense to you." And that's kind of what they told me. They didn't try to shove anything down my throat, but they said, the bottom line is this: if you connect with the power, you'll probably stay sober. If you don't, you're going to be in trouble. And and I had a hard time with that, but I did like a lot of us do. Man, I asked for help in the morning, and I tried to thank Him at night, and I tried to I just tried to do the best I could with following directions down there. I ended up, while I was there, I learned a lot, and probably the best work I did was that 4th and 5th step. And I don't think there's any one thing that defines a guy that, or a gal that's introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. We do this and we stay sober long term. I don't think that's the way it works. But I'll tell you, one thing I did that was important. When I was doing that 5th step, the guy I was doing it with, when I got to the end, he said, "Is there anything else?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, there is. There's always something else." And I went on and I talked about some stuff that was humiliating and embarrassing and stuff that I was fairly sure nobody would ever hear or would never see the light of day. But I did that. And I came clean with every secret and every dirty thing and everything I'd ever done in my life. And, again, I don't think that was really a defining moment that contributes to long-term sobriety, because I think it's what I do every day to try to treat my alcoholism and try to help somebody else is really what contributes to long-term sobriety. But I'll guarantee you, cleaning out the best I could at that point, it allowed the sunlight of the Spirit to shine in my life and expel the obsession to drink. And that's what, and I ain't saying I ain't never, Well, I can say I've never had the obsession to drink. I can't say I hadn't had the desire, the thoughts, or struggle with that from time to time. But from that point to this, that obsession was lifted. And, I believe that obsession's been removed, but I don't know how far it's been removed. So I don't want to let up on the program of action and let that obsession return, because I know when the insanity returns, and it does, and it will, and that obsession returns, I know how I am. I'll be in deep trouble. So I want to make sure I do whatever I can to keep that at bay. I ended up getting out of Samaritan Colony. It took me 11 weeks to complete an 8-week program. I'm a little slow at a lot of things, and what they told me was, and I don't know if this is worth anything, but they told me the first 2 weeks I wasn't available for treatment. And it wasn't my fault. The guy that I was rooming with, his sister was coming to the meetings, and I figured a guy checked into rehab for a couple of weeks deserved a girlfriend. The staff didn't agree with that, and so they thought at the end of my term or my sentence that I ought to stay another couple of weeks. And I'll tell you, I got to the point where I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to check out. I knew I had to check back into reality and get involved back in the community. I left there, and those of you that might be living in some kind of halfway house or a facility tonight, man, I applaud you, because that's exactly where I should have been. Unfortunately, that ain't where I was. I moved in with my oldest brother that I was still working with him some, and he was married and had two small daughters. And I'll tell you, God bless them, they were good to me. And but I was a pretty raw dude, and just trying to get sober and stay sober. It wasn't easy on them, wasn't easy on me. Actually, I got home one day, and his two daughters, they were sweet as they could be. They were like 6 and 8 years old. They had my stuff packed on the front steps. They was ready to see me go. And luckily, I talked them into letting me stay a little longer. But anyway, I got out of what I did was I ended up going to court, and I lost my license for 4 years. Man, that was painful. And luckily, I dodged. I was charged with a felony. Luckily, I was ended up convicted of a misdemeanor. I tell you, that's one of the things. I don't say we need to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and get a lesser sentence, but I'll tell you, if it works, it works. I don't know. It worked for me because I think I had not been in a lot of trouble prior to that, so I was able to not get as harsh a penalty as it could have been. What I did is I went to meetings. I didn't jump into a home group. I stayed connected with the colony. I did have a sponsor, but you know how it is. I did probably more things wrong than right, starting out. But, I eventually did latch on and tried to get grounded in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, what happened, I did, stayed sober and I was sober a year, and I was able to get my own apartment, and that would have been like in April of '85. And I'm grateful that one of those traditions has been alive in my life from that day to this, is that I've been self-supporting through my own contributions. I've had a lot of people to help me along the way, and I've had a lot of people teach me a lot of stuff that made sense and that's helped me. But I've never had to take advantage or have to go back home and hit my parents up, and not that I couldn't anyway, they didn't have anything, but I'm just, it's just one of the things I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, that it's okay to ask for help, and it's important to ask for help, but sometimes, it's up to me to be responsible and take care of things too. When I got my license back, I was able to, I had a guy that offered me a job, and I kept that job for 5 years, man. That was a world record for me, and it was a pretty good job. And in '91, I ended up getting laid off from that. The company hit some tough financial times, and I swear to God, it wasn't my fault that time. They didn't let me near the cash register in that business. But anyhow, I got laid off, and I started my own, a little repair company part-time, and I just had started doing that full-time, and that's kind of what been doing that ever since. God's been good to me, and has blessed me with a good business and with good people, and I'm grateful for that. they said not to get a relationship that first year. I didn't. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not sure. Relationship has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. So I didn't. And in fact, I didn't get married until '99, and I was real fortunate. That's one of the blessings in recovery is, being blessed with a good wife. And I appreciate Jeanette. Sometimes, I don't want anybody to lose hope, but sometimes I think there's one person on the planet that can put up with another, and I think that's kind of what we've got. I put up with her a lot. No, wait a minute. She puts up with me a lot. But have been fortunate to be married since '99, and the other thing is, there's been some tough times in recovery. It's not been all bed of roses, but it's been good. It's been a great ride, and I appreciate it. But and probably one of the toughest things, I always thought, what is one thing that could happen that would be devastating, that probably would cause me to either drink or thinking about drinking? And I don't know what that would look like. The book says that, this program has got what we need to solve all our problems. But I thought the death of somebody close or a parent would be pretty devastating. And, I was able to experience that. My dad, he'd been healthy, and I'll tell you, they didn't really understand if I was an alcoholic, my parents, but he supported me 100%. He went to way more Al-Anon meetings than I probably went to AA meetings. But he got sick in 02, I think, and he'd been healthy pretty much all his life, but he got sick, and that last year he was alive, he's pretty sick, but I was able to be there and spend some time with him and whatnot, and he ended up passing away, and that probably was the most devastating thing that ever happened to me. And we got the casket and all, and there was a drawer there that the grandkids were writing notes and stuff, and putting pictures in there. And I thought, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll write a note. And I got to thinking about that, and I got to thinking, what would I say to him? And I'll tell you, the good news for me is whatever I needed to say and whatever I needed to do had already been done through the grace of God and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and steps 8 and 9 in the amends process. Everything that needed to be said and everything that needed to be done had already been done. I didn't need to do any more. And I'm extremely grateful for that. And I know there might be some people sitting here tonight that loved ones have already passed on, and you may be new in sobriety, may be old in sobriety. And there's ways to clean that up, I think, with good sponsorship, and there's ways to make amends if people aren't still alive. But I'm grateful I was able to do that and be there and to enjoy that relationship, and I guess be the son and the brother that my family deserved, that they deserve to have. I guess the other thing that was pretty devastating is, like I said, I had a couple of older brothers that, of course, they struggled, and I was able to see them get sober, and I was able to see them put together several years of sobriety, and then, have problems, and then get sober, and just struggle with that. And, a lot of you know, one of my brothers, Bill, that, he had a stroke, and he rebounded from that, and he recovered, and he was probably more active than I was, but yet he struggled because he lost most of the use of his right side, but he could still get along eventually. And he did good probably for 4 or 5 years, and then things kind of between alcohol and drugs and the stroke, and sometimes our bodies get pretty badly burned, and they're only going to heal themselves so much, and he ended up taking a turn for the worse, and he passed away, and I was able to be there and help him the best I could. But I'll tell you, we see on TV, and some of you have probably experienced this. On TV, it seems like people just close their eyes and they go to sleep. But if you ever experience somebody kind of getting sick and passing away, it don't happen like that. It's pretty tough. And, but I was able to experience that, and I was able to allow the people in Alcoholics Anonymous and my friends and family to help me through that and to make sure that everything was going to be okay. And I knew everything was going to be okay, but that doesn't take the sting away. It's still pretty tough. But, we talk about this as a killer illness, and armed with that information will keep no one sober. I'm pretty confident of that. And I don't care how bad my life was, that information ain't going to keep me sober today. But the two guys I was telling you, at 11 years old, that I smoked weed with, one of them was my brother that passed away, and the other one, and Bill was like 52 when he passed away. The other one was in his late 40s, and he's passed away. The other one's brother has passed away, just this week, a good friend of ours that we used to run with passed away, and 52 years old. That's the average age alcoholic that's still drinking dies. And, I don't know. It just, I don't know. That is just, I think, a wake-up call to let me know that this is a killer illness. And it doesn't really matter how long I've been sober. I need to understand that I may not always be sober, and I need to appreciate it, and I need to get busy, really need to get busy helping somebody else, and that's what I try to do. And I'm grateful that this program, I like what the book says is frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is a bright spot of our lives. And that's true in my life. I mean, I see you guys out sometimes, or I'm working with a new guy. It doesn't get any better than that. And sometimes it might seem like a burden, but it never is. I had a guy one time that I was sponsoring. I guess maybe he was interviewing me. I don't know. But he asked me, he said, what's your success rate sponsoring guys? I'm like, well, I don't know. Let me think about that. And I looked at him. I didn't think long because sometimes I can think fast on my feet. I said, best I can tell so far, it's 100%. I hadn't got drunk yet. And, and that was the truth. But what I do when I'm working with a guy, I try to meet with him a few times, and we sit down and we go through the book. And we're going to go through these 12 steps. And if it says pray, we're going to pray. If it says work a step, we're going to work a step. And I think there's some kind of, there's just something spiritual, I think, about sitting down one-on-one with the guy and going through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And those first 164 pages, it lays out the program of recovery, and the book says it shows us precisely how we get well. And my other thought, and I don't know if this is an opinion or the truth, I think it might be the truth. I don't think getting sober in Alcoholics Anonymous is a crapshoot. I don't think God looks at some of us and say, you're going to get sober, and looks at others and says, you're going to struggle and pick up 1,000 white chips, and another one ain't never going to get sober. I don't think that's how, I just don't think that's how God works. I don't think that's how the program works. I believe the program works 100% to anyone that's willing to completely give themselves to this simple program. And that's why I don't believe it's a crapshoot. I think it's kind of like if I Google how to go from here to Raleigh, and I follow those directions, I'm going to get to Raleigh. And I ain't going to miss, unless I'm in a blackout, I might end up in Virginia. But, if I'm sober, I'm going to land in Raleigh. And I'm probably going to land exactly where I'm supposed to land in Raleigh. And I think the Big Book has those same clear-cut directions. Hell, I believe the Big Book's better than Google. Because it's going to tell us exactly how this deal works. It's so those are some tough times I've been through. The program and life has been good to me, and I try to be grateful and give back when I can. And I'll tell you something some folks told me early on is they taught me how to give, not only of my time but my money. And sometimes I think giving money, to individuals or charity or whatever is a little easier than me giving my time. It seems like my time gets to be the challenge sometimes. It's a little easier to write a check than to sit down with a guy and go through the book. But when I think about gratitude and being grateful, I think about Neil. No, that's a joke. Yeah, right. Well, they do now. So you just need to let Neil know how grateful you guys are. ever worried about that. But no, when I think about gratitude and being grateful, you know, I do like to say I'm grateful or that I have gratitude, but the truth of the matter is, what am I doing to show the gratitude? You know, and I guess one of the places I can check my gratitude is I can look in my checkbook and see where my money goes. Is it going to me and my selfish desires, or is it going to help somebody else? And I think there needs to be a combination of that. Now I look at my calendar. You know, am I doing stuff for me that's pretty self-serving, or am I doing something that try to help somebody else? And I think at the end of the day, those are the good barometers of whether or not I have any gratitude. Well, I think I've, as Peter gracefully said, I think it was Kurt. I think I got a resentment. I think I spewed all I can right now. And but I appreciate you guys. Chuck, appreciate you asking me to speak. Appreciate y'all being here and just trying to get Mary Kay out of here by 9 o'clock. All right. Thanks, guys. I love you.